Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cardalicchio. I couldn't even know my last name. Want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, where we're finding function in a dysfunctional world. We have a good friend of mine on, Lisa Jendza. Lisa, how are you today? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Dr. Dan. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, this is an important topic. We're going to talk about kitchen. We're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about a lot of different things to give some great tips, strategies to help out individuals that need to get better, especially from food. So Lisa, dynamic change agent and business guru. She cut her teeth in the business world at GM, very successful in EDS, successful career with HP, Hewlett Packard, leaving the comfort to go for her calling. I love that entrepreneurial stuff, Lisa. That just jazzes me when I hear this. After a decade of teaching holistic health, Lisa could clearly see a need to gather in the kitchen with like-minded individuals to influence the shift to conscious consumerism. Being in the kitchen symbolizes taking care of oneself. It is how we nourish, show love to others. Oh boy, I'm going to cry. Well, I'll tell you why in a second. Lisa's classes always end up in the kitchen. Students of Lisa's programs has said it set them free. Freedom is her life's purpose. So my mother, as you know, I told you that my mother recently passed away. So when I eulogized her, I yelled at everybody because that's what I do. But she said that she didn't want anybody crying. So, everybody's upset, everybody's crying. And, so I started eulogizing her, and I said that she showed love, and the one way that she showed love was in food. Every Friday nights 50 to 75 pizzas came out of this little oven in Newark, New Jersey, and so forth and so on. So food is love, depending upon which way you look at it. So Lisa, so you had this really successful career, right? You were rocking and rolling, then all of a sudden you were like, okay, I'm going to change, right? You probably went to your husband and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. He's like, you're making bank. You're staying exactly where you are. I've heard that before. So what was that? You had a health issues, that health crisis. What changed? What made you change? What was that for you?
Yeah, so I loved my career, and I will say that at EDS, it was structured entrepreneurship. Ross Perot really fostered what I call structured entrepreneurship. So I think I've always been an entrepreneur. HP didn't have the same philosophy as EDS, that's for sure, and HP purchased EDS. I loved, though, consulting, and I could see things from a different perspective. Part of my personality is always to question why. I'm a very curious person, and I can see things that other people can't see. And so I ended up having some insight into really corporate America and our GDP around the same time that I had a health crisis. And what brought it all together for me was seeing that things had become, in the United States, very much like an assembly line. Everything had become an assembly line, including health.
Yes. It's turned into that, and it's frustrating. You got to see more patients in order to even pay your staff and pay the bills. Everything is just going, which isn't the way it has been at all. And I don't like it. So anyway. All right, I'll get off my soapbox with that because I can go on for hours.
Yes, but you get it. So I was sent to different specialists because apparently my wrists and my ankles having inflammation would require two different doctors and two different solutions, as if they're not connected to the same body. So I was seeing one doctor for carpal tunnel surgery while another doctor is telling me to take Advil every day for the pain in my ankles. And I was 26 years old. So had I started taking Advil at 26 years old, I would probably now be in kidney failure. So
no doubt.
I started to look at, because I was already starting to see the world, everything as an assembly line, I could see in the medical industry that everything had become specialized and very much like an assembly line. And so I started studying holistic health, and I started down the path of detoxification because my intuition said I needed to detox
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to detox everything. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went off to become a detox expert. And that's when I decided to walk away from my career and open a wellness spa
Mm-hmm.
and start teaching detoxification. And I
Right.
didn't tell my husband for a while. He thought I was crazy.
You're sitting there and like, well, I'm working for HP. I'm doing pretty well here. And you're gonna who? You're gonna what? You're gonna because I start off with a detox with all of my patients, by the way. So he's like, honey, go out there and make that money, you know. So detox, what was that for you? Did you do a detox? How did it help you?
Yes. I started studying detoxification around 2007, opened my wellness spa in 2008. And for me, it was, well, first I had to quit smoking. So
Oh,
listen,
wait
I
a
always
second.
say
You were a smoker, huh?
I was. I was this is a judgment-free zone. I always say everyone who works with me, you never have to fear. There's no room for me to judge. I was a smoker of 21 years and we ate out 7 days a week because my IT career had me working around the clock.
Right.
So we ate out every day. So I raised my kids on packaged foods, processed foods, and that's kind of how
Everyman dinner.
I think that's how I ended up where I am today. This is restitution.
No
the
doubt.
classes I teach now,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so I needed to quit smoking. And then I started studying mineral body wraps, how to flush the nicotine out of my body, sauna therapy, cold plunges. I went on to do breath work, pranayama, yoga teacher training. Then I got certified to do acu-detox, which is acupuncture of the ear,
Right.
for detoxification, and lymph drainage, number of different methodologies, which then led me to reading up and researching more on yeast, candida, parasites, and other things that we need to detox from, including bromine, which when you take iodine, your body will then flush the bromine.
100%.
My whole family did a bromine detox, and we were so sick, but we had eaten so much processed food that we had to get all the bromine out. So I always say you can't do a detox in a weekend. It doesn't come in a box. It's a process.
That's right.
And it's working with the body to shed layers. And then, of course, it's changing your lifestyle. So you have to live a detox lifestyle. So you have to clean up your personal care products, your household care products. But you could see the difference. And when people would look at the pictures of me, they're like, oh my gosh, you look 10 years younger. And I'm like, it's amazing when we get rid of the chemicals.
You know what? And for all of the listeners here today, this is extremely important with what Lisa's saying. You got to watch the chemicals in your food. You got to watch the chemicals that are in your environment because they will adversely affect you. And once you do that, and once that starts down that cascade, right, your detoxification system reaches overload, cannot detox anymore. Then what happens is that your body starts to break down. And once your body starts to break down, you got to look at these body systems and, you're going to take a medication for this and this and this. And I'm not an anti-medication, but to do a detox, to clean up, to make this positive lifestyle change is extremely important. So what happened with you? What was so you had carpal tunnel, what was it that you had to do to change? What did you find out about your body and your physiology?
So I was type 2 diabetic by 36.
Oh.
So I was over 200 pounds. I had so many aches and pains. I thought it was fibromyalgia.
Right. That's what everybody goes to in the beginning.
Yeah. Yep. And it was just chronic inflammation. So I needed to remove everything white from my diet. So I'm Italian and we eat a lot of pasta. And here's what happened. When I was 10 years old, my dad was 36 and he was diagnosed with heart disease. And we were put on a low-fat diet. His cardiologist said, no fat, but you can have as much pasta as you want. So we just increased our consumption of pasta and bread, and we removed all the butter and replaced it with margarine and so on and so forth.
Well, that was the current thinking back then in the 70s when this was going on. A low-fat diet was going to be healthy because fats are lipids, and that can create more of a problem. But we know now that there's healthy fats, which is very important.
Yep. So I was 10 when we went low fat. And at age 18, when I had my lipid panel done, they said, your triglycerides are over 100. They're extremely high, and we don't know why. And 3 doctors came into the room. We had a new HMO at the time, teen doctoring. And they came in the room and said, yeah, we don't really understand this or know why, but we would tell you to probably lay off any fried foods, fast foods, fatty foods. Again, never addressing the carbohydrates. Now, I lean vegetarian, just naturally. I've always chosen, I prefer to eat less meat. And so I eat more carbs, and I was a carbohydrate addict.
Well, you become used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think happened to my triglycerides from age 18 to the time I had type 2 diabetes at 36?
Tell me, all right, so we're going to play a little game right now. Hold on. Let's put the brakes on. How high were your triglycerides? I'm going to write down, before you answer, I'm going to write down what my triglycerides were so you don't think I'm lying to you. All right? Circling it. Go ahead. Tell me.
They were almost 300.
Oh, you're a baby when it comes to this. 1227. Mine were 1,227. 300 is extremely high.
Yes.
1227 is out of control.
Yes.
That is what happens. So now this is leading you into this metabolic dysregulation that you're experiencing. And now you're a type 2 diabetic. Who's got it better than you? No, yeah, that's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
What happened? What did you do?
Well, so this was a big wake-up call for me. And maybe this will help others to see this, because we always want to blame genetics. Well, it runs in the family, I'm predisposed, whatever. And so I remember hearing Louise Hay, who's a spiritual teacher, say, type 2 diabetes is not genetic, it's learned behavior. Change your diet and exercise. And I was kind of annoyed when I first heard her say that, because that would require personal responsibility. But here was the wake-up call. I'm adopted. It can't be genetic.
It's not genetics. It's not genetics. And this is interesting because last week, a friend of mine, Debbie, you may know her, I'll tell you her last name offline. She put up a post, and she said, and a gentleman also that you probably know put up a post, and they said that, you know, type 2 diabetes, not that we're saying it's not a genetic predisposition, but it's a cabinet predisposition, because you go in, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, me, you're diabetic, but you're all eating from the same cabinet. You're all eating the same foods. So that's the situation where it becomes, well, maybe somebody needs to change. Maybe somebody needs to change. So it was something that you were experiencing in the house, right?
Yes.
And you know what? Our parents weren't bad people, Lisa. They just didn't know what they didn't know, right? They just didn't know what they didn't know. You know, listen, coming from an Italian family, you know, for breakfast, there was, you know, meatball and macaroni and some gravy, or if you like to call it sauce, and, you know, whatever it is, that's just what we did, right? And it leads you to a point of where you get to, then you have that health crisis.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, it required me to take personal responsibility, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Required me to change my life. And then that really made me become aware again of the misconceptions and how people were being misled. Now, I had no intention of teaching food or nutrition. I really did feel a calling to teach people how to detox, because I felt like suddenly everything had become extremely toxic. The more research I did to clean up my own life, the more dismayed I became at the number of chemicals that had crept into our everything, our household cleaners, our personal care products. And I was angry. So this was, 2008, 2009. And I thought, how come nobody is talking about this? And why is no one linking this to disease? the research that I show says, 84,000 registered chemicals in use in the United States, and it's being found in cord blood of babies.
Mhm.
And we're
Yes.
watching our disease rate go up. And so I started lecturing and speaking more about detoxification, not so much food, but somehow my classes always would end up in the kitchen, because people would say, but you can't really talk about detox without talking about what we're putting in our body.
Right.
And so ultimately people would say, how did you clean up your diet? What do you
Mhm.
eat? What does healthy look like?
What does it look like? Right.
What does it
Exactly
look
right.
like? Yes.
So what did you, so you had this calling now, right? Because you're just addicted to all of these foods, and your triglycerides are creeping up. You're sitting there, maybe a little metformin, maybe a little insulin. So now you want to contribute. Now you want to really just kind of get out there and tell everybody, what is this thing? And this is where you come up with freedom. Freedom. Talk more about this freedom and your life's purpose of setting people free, especially from these foods.
Yeah, it's been this very organic progression. So the first business I had when I left HP was called The New You. I had the New You Wellness Spa, and I literally was helping people become the new, of course, because I was becoming the new me. And then my detox program evolved very naturally. I was teaching workshops on each piece that I was learning, and then eventually it all came together as a 3-month detox program, which I called Glow Natural, because people would say to me, you glow. And I don't wear a lot of makeup. And I would say, it's not on the outside. I'm glowing from the inside. And when you detox, you will glow too. You'll glow naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started teaching more classes, my students would say, you set me free. And I was like, oh, I love that. Now
I really do like that. You set me free.
Yeah.
Now, do you deal with mainly with adults, teaching them about foods? Do you deal with kids? Do you deal with everybody? What is that like?
Well, for 14 years, I taught only adults. I had a wellness spa. I had mostly middle-aged women coming in. And I found something interesting. And this is part of my mission now, is to educate people on this. I thought when mom got healthy, the whole family got healthy. And I believe there's a lot to be said for when mom is healthy, the household is healthier.
I love that. Go ahead, go with this. I love this.
But what I found is it wasn't entirely true.
Go ahead.
Moms will create themselves a separate meal, and they'll make for their kids what they think their kids want. So then I got moms coming to me saying, I'm cooking 2 or 3 meals. And I was like mind blown. Like, what do you mean you're cooking? Now, when I went healthy, my kids were in middle school and they had been raised on fast food and junk food. So it was not an overnight transition by any means.
And nothing ever is when it comes to detoxifying your body and getting ready and getting healthy. It takes time. It's taken you decades to get here. Not that it takes you decades to get better, but it will definitely take a bit of time. Yeah.
So I'm not saying deprive the kids, because if you take away everything they were used to and you try to flip the switch overnight, okay, they're going to rebel. It's not going to be successful. You don't want them hiding. You don't want that deprivation to set in. Okay. But if you are making a healthy meal, invite them to be a part of it. Don't make separate meals. So I'm not saying get rid of everything, but don't make separate meals. So what I found was even my empty nester clients, so my older adults were like, okay, I did everything you said, Lisa. I cleaned out my pantry. I called my kids and told them to come get all the food. And I'm like, so we just determined that this food is toxic and you're giving it to your kids.
Because you know why? It's just easier to keep them quiet than it is to change them for the best, right? Because you're getting mac and cheese out of a box, right? You're getting mac and cheese out of a box. I mean, being Italians, you're eating a little macaroni out of a box like that, and you put a little water. I mean, I think I made it for my son once, and I was looking down at this, and I threw it out, and I said, no, this is not mac and cheese, because there's really no cheese in it. It was powder that becomes, right? And all those chemicals, but it's easier. Lisa, it's easier just to give that to them, because it's like emotional eating for young kids where they just love that. They just love the taste. It's not like, you boiled some macaroni or whatever it was, healthy, whatever. Because back in the 60s, they made the homemade macaroni, and that was really, really good, by the way. I'm salivating. I'm having a Pavlovian reaction right now. But it just changed, because you're making mac and cheese. It takes like 30 seconds to make mac and cheese, and you just put it in front of them. Then you put on the TV, right? And now their brain is dead and their body is dead,
Yes.
doing all of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I had no intention of teaching kids. Of course,
Right.
I had no intention of teaching this to
At
adults.
all. Yeah.
So 3 or 4 years ago now, I had been asked to teach some kids cooking classes, which
Right.
I said, no, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a daycare provider. And what was interesting, so I hired a retired teacher and I had her put together a program. And when she started teaching things like chicken nuggets, pizza, and mac and cheese, I just about lost it, because I thought we cannot continue to exacerbate the problem and feed into these myths that that's all that kids eat. So is it kids that set this example, or is it the adults? And you just said it with the mac and cheese. It's just so much easier, right? So where is that impression coming from is my question. Is that coming from the kids or is it coming from the adults? And I set out to prove a point. And when I started teaching kids cooking classes, we don't do any of those junk foods. My kids make stir fry, they make sweet potato muffins, they make their own granola bars, they make.
So it's the real deal. You're cooking. It's not that you're in the kitchen and you get the box and say, okay, get the water, put a cup of water in here, put this in here, then put this in there, then you stir and you're ready to go. You're teaching them real food. I got yelled at for saying real food because I said you got to eat real food, and somebody said, what does that mean? I said, so you consider a Twinkie real food? Right? I mean, that's just crazy as far as I'm concerned. But so you're teaching them. So you're trying to answer the question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it the parents or was it the kids? I think it's the parents, because the parents give them this. Then it changes. I think it morphs into the kids, because you may sit there and say, listen, lunch, I got a little mac and cheese. I'm busy. Let's just get a little something. Let me put you in front of the TV. That happens to all of us. But then what happens is that they get addicted to this stuff because it really tastes good. And you might as well wash it down with a sugary soda. You might as well do that. And then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And then they want it again, because then parents, I think they feel bad because now they want to change it around a little bit, right? Right? Did you find that where they want to change it? But what are you doing now? You've already caused that in motion where these kids want to they want to eat this stuff for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
So here's what I would posit. I would posit that the future of the free world hangs in the balance right now and is completely dependent on us empowering our kids, because it's the parents or the adults. Let me restate that. It's the adults that have skewed the system. The parents got busy. They needed something easy. They went to the convenience packaged pre-made foods. The food companies run by adults, not kids, made those foods hyper palatable and put addictive qualities in those foods. The addictive qualities in those foods have now captured them with dopamine,
right,
or put them into the limbic brain. They are unable to use their prefrontal cortex because it's literally blocked from the processed foods. So this is all the adults conspiring to limit the independence and freedom for our children.
right.
And so when we put the power back in their hands, so in my classes, I make them fun, funny, and engaging, and I'll say, oh my gosh, you guys, we forgot to put the yellow food dye in our lemon meringue pie. And they all look around and they look at the recipe and they're like, we forgot something. And then they look at me and they go, Miss Lisa, it doesn't need yellow food coloring. My lemon meringue pie's yellow.
Right.
And then we read labels and I'm like, why do you think they put this in the stores? I had a senior in high school who said to me when he learned how to make Jell-O, he was just looking at me And I said, Nathan, do you have a question? And he said, I just don't understand if it's this easy, why we buy the instant stuff at the grocery store. And I said, because they don't think you're smart enough to make it yourself.
Wow, you're dropping so much right now. And this is extremely important because the parents that are listening to this right now, you listen to Lisa, because let me tell you something. This is a big comment that she made. They don't think that we're smart enough. And I think that's extremely important because I don't, and I agree with Lisa, they don't think that we're smart enough to figure stuff out on our own. So if you want a lemon meringue pie and that food coloring makes it more yellow, what does that mean? Right, Lisa? What does that mean? Right? I mean, do you have to have it more yellow? If you buy a piece of salmon and they make it more pinkish, whatever that color is, that salmon color, does that make it better for you or more palatable? But you look at it and you go, oh, that looks pretty. I want to eat it, right? I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? It doesn't mean much to me.
So one of my classes with the kids, I bring in mint chip ice cream that doesn't have the green food coloring.
Right.
And so I ask everyone, guess what flavor this is? And they say vanilla chip because it's not green. And then I give everyone a spoon and I say, okay, everyone take a spoonful. And they're like, oh, it's mint. And I'm like, right. How come you didn't know it was mint? And they're like, because it's not green. And I said, but does it need to be green to taste like mint?
No.
And this is when, so these are the types of things I do in my classes because they have to come up with the answer. We have to stop treating kids like all they can do is memorize and regurgitate because the world isn't working.
Yeah.
And the trajectory we're on is not sustainable, yet we're not teaching kids how to think. And that's what I do in my classes. I use cooking and food to help them clean up their health, but it's really to get them to start thinking.
So your goal is multifaceted. So okay, come on in, kids. Let's make some sweet potato pancakes. I'm just saying something.
Yep.
I don't even know if there's such a thing, but
we're making them this fall. That's so funny.
All right, that's great. So and then you're teaching them how to think in addition to being healthy, because when they get out there in adulthood, they're going to be much better off up here and in their body. You're on a mission here.
I am. I'm actually on a mission to preserve or reclaim our freedom. Right. I believe that our freedoms have been limited or lost, and we're losing them at a pretty rapid rate because we've lost the ability to use our prefrontal cortex. There's less and less critical thinking happening and more repetition, repeating what we hear over and over again. So I challenge all of those beliefs. Like I'll ask the kids, what is the most important meal of the day, right? So I also lecture at hospitals, nurses, social workers, everyone, breakfast. It's just so repeated, but no one has any critical thinking around it. And that's what I'm trying to get back with our kids. I don't even know if our generation, I sometimes I feel like our generation's a lost cause. Like it's just too late. So now I was working with my generation, and now I'm working with younger kids, almost bypassing the adults and getting to them. And I have had high school students. So I take kids ages 6 to 18. I've had high school students come to me and say, you are the best teacher I've ever had, or this is the best class I've ever had. And they said, because you don't tell us, you don't just have us memorize or repeat things, you give us options and choices, and you tell us why so that we can make our own decisions.
This is very important on multiple different levels. You know, I see this in my own family, and I've had conversation. My niece, I won't mention their names because they hate when I mention their names, Lisa. You know, I mean, I love my nieces to pieces, you know, but you know, they have a difficult time thinking, you know, and we discuss different things and they do. So what I do with my son is kind of what you're doing, you know, and I do it with food also, you know, he plays hockey. So, you know, it's like in between a game, you want the pizza? Do you want the cheeseburger? Or am I going to get something different to fuel your body? What do you think? and of course, in the beginning, he's like, well, all my buddies are getting cheeseburgers or something like that, bacon cheeseburgers. I understand. Get your bacon cheeseburger. Then he's having a tough time skating because it's like this, bomb in his belly. Next time, what do you want? So he makes better choices, and he's looking at things from a different standpoint. Chicken fingers and French fries. Everybody has chicken fingers and French fries between a game. You got an hour and a half, quick and easy. You go to the rink place where you eat, and they have it to you in 30 seconds. But now he's saying, no, I don't want that. Dad, is there a lean piece of chicken with a little, with some veggies? I want that. I don't want too much because I gotta get on the ice in 2 hours. Just a little bit. I need to replenish. But this is important for the parents, and you should have your children listen to this in addition to just, right, Lisa? Just
Yes.
not only the parents, but the children should listen to this, because this is what is important right now. I couldn't agree with you more. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I like to interject every now and again, Lisa.
Yeah, no problem. So I think where we got it wrong as adults, okay, so we were busy, fast paced, we needed things quick. And then somewhere along the line, of course, we introduced these hyper palatable foods with addictive qualities. And because food is love and food is nourishment, and we want to love our kids, we want to give them what they want. So some of the mistakes that we've made, including myself, this is not a judgment, we've used food as reward and punishment. So you did such a great job today, we're going to go out for ice cream. Like, who wants to go out for ice cream? We make so
everybody's going to raise their hand. It's the summertime. Let's go, of course, right?
Right. So we are creating more neural networks in their brain that are associating these foods that are bad for us as a reward. And how that shows up as a punishment, here's just an example. Okay, whoever has the best report card gets to pick where we go out to dinner. But whoever has the worst report card just basically got punished because they didn't get to pick where we went out for dinner. But going out for dinner now becomes like a big deal. That was in my house growing up. So we've used food as a reward and punishment instead of nourishment and sustenance. And then whatever our kids like, so my daughter loved brownies. So to this day, I have to fight the urge when I'm going to see her to make her a tray of brownies, because that would be to show her love. And so I have had to master some new healthy recipes. She now had banana, blueberry, almond muffins and my sweet potato chocolate chip muffins, because I had to find something else that I could make for her that would show love, but not be a box of brownies. So I encourage parents and grandparents now, take a step back. What truly shows love? A tray of box brownies with colored sprinkles so that your grandson can bounce off the walls. And then at 11 o'clock, you're like, why doesn't this kid go to bed? And you're trying to give him melatonin, because that happens in my family too.
Of course.
My parents are still notorious for box mixes. Anything they have a coupon for, they don't see the danger in dyes. And I have two nephews who are highly affected by gluten, sugar, and dyes. So we have to reassess what is love and what is nourishing to our family.
Yeah, that is extremely important. Again, I'm going to go back to my mom. After I had the heart attack, they just didn't understand why I couldn't eat the way that I was accustomed to eating. The homemade monogots weren't homemade anymore. The macaroni wasn't homemade anymore. There was no jar, because that would just be sacrilege, gravy or anything like that. But still, it just changed, and they couldn't understand. But they were brought up in that TV generation where they had those commercials that you could, listen to, and like, oh, this is good. We're American now. We're Americanized, and so this is good. So we're gonna buy this. I'm sure you can think of a jingle from a fast food restaurant. I don't like to mention names, and it starts off, and you can just go, right? You could just go because it's like 60 years later and you can't, and it's just ingrained into your brain. And when you pass it, you got to go because you want two wall beef patties, right? I mean, that's just the way the marketing and strategies went, and you and I could probably talk about that, for forever when it comes to this. So, you've said to me offline that the food supply is in jeopardy, and you're concerned about soil and so forth. And I've read a lot of studies on this, and I'm just beginning to understand this a little bit myself, to be honest with you. Talk about that, because I find this fascinating.
Yeah, so I went from the wellness spa business to the food business. So I have co-founded a commercial kitchen and ended up developing a food product. I got very plugged into Michigan State University has a food product development lab. I became a member of NIC, which is the network of incubator kitchens. Did a lot of research because still my passion is still business. So, I have 25 years business, reading annual reports, looking at numbers and data. So I was really kind of curious about the food startup industry as I became involved in all these foodpreneur groups, and found that 89% of the food startups are failing. So I have a diagram, it's on some of my sites. There are 10 companies that control all of the food in our grocery stores in the United States. 10 companies. And at the very top, you have Vanguard and BlackRock, the same two financial institutions that control big agri, big pharma. So really, when you go to the very top, it's become a chemical soup. We have these chemicals. How can we use them? We're going to put them in the food, put them in the soil, put them in the seeds. And so at the very top, it's all connected by very few companies, which really looks like a monopoly, smells like a monopoly, seems like a monopoly. And so you've got 36,000 brands of food that roll up to 10 companies.
Right.
So I just really want that to sink in. And if you look at the board of directors, Coke and Pepsi aren't really different companies. It's, they still serve each other. So at the very top, it's consolidated. So how would a new and emerging healthy food brand, if we want to create something new for our kids, and look around, there's a lot of emerging healthy food brands because people like me have health issues. And so then we create grain-free products, dairy-free products, sugar-free products. So you have a huge amount of food startups happening. 89% of them fail because it's a huge capital expenditure and the resources are held very tightly at the top. So they can't get into the food system. So if we look at the food system and we say, well, we want to leave something new for our kids. I'm in the second half of my life. This is when I start to look back and say, what is the legacy? I need to leave the world a better place than we found it. So we need to fix the food system. So how do we help these emerging healthy food brands? They can't break into this closed system and they don't have the resources or the capital that these big companies have. So somehow we have to create this new food ecosystem. Like, how do those of us seeking healthy food support those brands, which is part of the mission of Freedom Kitchen, for us to support those brands, which then led me to look at the natural resources. So when we start looking at the natural resources and the work of Zach Bush, and I've been studying bees now for about 15 years, and we only have about 50 to 60 years left with the bee populations dying at the rate that they're dying. The work of Zach Bush in doing soil health says we only have 50 to 60 years left of harvests left on this planet. So I have 6-year-olds in my cooking classes. That means by the time they're 66, there will be no harvests and no bees. So we either are going to have to become breatharians and adjust our bodies to survive on breath and sunlight, or we will cease to exist, which, there are many that say we've already started the 6th extinction. I'm still more hopeful that we can change things. No matter what, we have to try. We have to try to change the trajectory we're on. By regenerating the soil, Dr. Elaine Ingram's got a great program with the Soil Food Web. When we bring the bugs back, when we bring the microbes back to the soil, the food nourishes our gut and brings the healthy microbiome back to our gut. It's amazing. But this is where we have to start.
That's why there's so many gut issues. Every one of my patients I'm looking at, and I, I say to my students, go to the gut. Always, always go to the gut.
Yes. So part of my mission is to bring more awareness to regenerative farming. Again, there's a lot of propaganda. Now we're becoming fearful of cow farts. We need ruminant animals. If people understood how regenerative agriculture and how agriculture is supposed to work, it wasn't supposed to be sterile monocrops or raising cows on concrete or in a closed environment, or us living entirely off plants. I mean, there are so many extremes happening in the world right now. And this is why I say we just need to get in the kitchen, and we just need to cook, and we need to eat real food, and we need to have the ability to use our prefrontal cortex so we can think logically.
Right.
I live in a cold climate. I live in Michigan. We can't live on plants, and I lean vegetarian. We can't live on plants all 365 days a year.
Right.
And that wasn't how our ancestors lived. And so, and I tell my students, anytime you hear anyone say like the best diet for you, run the other way, because no one knows what your body needs, what your ancestral line is or was. We have to be able to think for ourselves. And that just starts, with clean food and taking personal responsibility.
You've mentioned this many times before, we're going to have to think for yourselves. Tell us when you didn't think for yourself. I'm just going to take a little detour here. What was that like for you? Because this is something you're really passionate about. Tell us, when did you didn't think for yourself, and what did that do to you?
So I was adopted, and so this was probably a lesson that I learned, pretty early on in life. And this could be a really big topic, and I'll try to sum it up with, we're told how to think. Like as an adoptee, you're told you should be grateful. You should be grateful. Look at this great family that adopted you. And I do have a great family, but no one ever acknowledged that I had to lose a family to gain a family. So I was never allowed to grieve the family I lost and the part of myself that I didn't know. I didn't know who I was.
Right.
Okay, so I was told how to think my whole life.
Right.
And so there became a breaking point after I had my children and looked at my children and didn't really know where I came from. So I didn't know where they came from. And so there was a very big awakening for me in my 20s.
Right.
And it's difficult. It can be difficult to think for yourself and to go against the grain.
Right.
We have very strong needs as humans to belong. So I didn't want to upset the apple cart, because the more I questioned things, the more I alienated the only family I had. Right. So people don't want to alienate their tribe. Right. So they'll keep their mouth shut. And so we just repeat. And I think that's how we have gotten stuck. I see the United States in a position, the majority of people very stuck in a pattern of repeating and virtue signaling. Like, I think this is what everybody wants to hear. So this is what
especially when it comes to health and food, they're all doing that. They're all doing that. That's a very important point. Oh my God, I just looked at our time checker. We're almost at 50 minutes. We're rocking here. We got a couple of more minutes and we haven't finished yet, Lisa. It's just a couple of Italians talking to each other at this point, right? All right, Lisa.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day long. I mean, and I can talk about it from multiple perspectives. When people say to me, like, where do I start? And I say, you have to start with taking personal responsibility. So look in your pantry. And when you look in your pantry, look at what companies you're supporting. And then go look at their practices. And then go look at your 401k. Because before you can blame a single company for making a cheaper product, you better go look at where your 401k is invested. Because you've probably hired that company to give you a return on your investment. So they're doing their job. They're making a
That's right.
cheaper and cheaper food product on the shelf so that they have a bigger margin. You didn't hire them for your health. You hired them for a return on Wall Street. And you might want to rethink where you're investing your savings in your retirement.
100%. What I just did is I pulled out my calendar because we got to set another podcast in the next 7 to 10 days so we can finish up. All right. So Lisa, this has been quite the conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting in there and delving more into this. Now, a couple of more questions. I got like 1,000 questions I can ask you. You're going to have in October, you're going to have an event. Tell us a little bit about that event.
Yeah, this one's called Freedom Kitchen Live. So I produced a 4-part docu-series on kids and food because I still see too much denial starting in my own family. And I still work with the public. I teach for a school district, so I'm out in the community, and I see the level of denial that our kids are suffering is palpable. And I am trying to paint the picture of what's happened with ADD, with autism. So I have the 4-part docu-series, and I've done a couple summits. This one I want to do live, where we actually live stream and the audience can come on and ask questions and participate. We need to start getting people on the track that they need. Okay, if you have food addiction in your family and you need to be on the food addiction track, if you want to start gardening, if you want to start homesteading, here's the tracks. And those are all the tracks that I'm putting in place.
That's awesome. I love that. And we're going to really get into that in the next week. I can't believe we're at like 55 minutes. That's out of control. So how can people find you?
Yeah. They can go to freedomkitchensummit.com. That's probably the best place because the last summit is still up, and they can watch the docu-series. And that's probably the most important thing to me, Dr. Dan. Our kids.
Freedom Kitchen Summits or Summit?
Summit.
Yeah, Summit.
Freedom
No
Kitchen
S.
Summit.
Okay. Awesome.
The kids are the future. It sounds cliche, but you guys need to just imagine in 20 years from now, if we don't change the trajectory we're on, it will really impact all of us.
Well, you know what? It is cliche, but you're doing something about it to make it better, because usually people just go like that and they don't do anything. Lisa, when we get off, don't leave, okay? Because we're gonna set up another one in the next 7 to 10 days so that we can finish off. And I love what you're doing with the live stream, and we're gonna have something a week or so before. And we're going to talk about that live stream. You'll have everything ready to go, and then let's talk about it. And I think that I'm going to sign up for that myself, or I'm going to get in there and I'm going to, become a participant in this live streaming, because I'm very interested in what you're talking about. So, Lisa, I feel empty because we didn't finish, but we're going to finish the next time. I got my calendar out. So Lisa, this has been great. Thank you very much for being on. I look forward to the next conversation in the next week or so. So everybody, today is August 5th. This is going out next week. So you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to understand what's going on. And then maybe what we'll do is the second one, we'll do a live, okay, and we'll bill it as such. And then maybe we can get some individuals coming on and ask some questions. All right, when we do this. So I'm thinking out loud right now. I think that would be exciting. So Lisa, thank you very much for being on today, even though I feel so totally incomplete at this point, right?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so everybody listen to this, show it to your parents, show it to your children. This is important information. Get ready for part 2. Thank you for listening. Live your best life.